Hello, fellow Vikings. Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to ASKA, Episode 7, Building a Hunting Hut. As you can see above my head, the first thing I want you guys to do, you early birds, is to vote on the next construction project, and I will lay out the benefits of the projects so that you are making an informed choice. Building another cottage is relatively straightforward. The shelters can only house so many, and it doesn't really have a built-in source of heat. The cottages, of course, have fireplaces, and then you can also add furniture inside of them, making them even nicer. And it is a more secure way to go to sleep. People find it more comfortable. The chieftain's house is the house that the player sleeps in. And the really big benefit of the chieftain's house, there's two big benefits. One, you can put away your own like armor and tools, and they won't get taken by villagers because it is your own personal property. And then another one is that resting in the bed in the chieftain's house gives you a huge stamina buff, which you can obtain like once every, I think, 12 minutes. So it's a very powerful buff if I need to do a whole lot of like running, exploring, building, etc. combat. A cooking hut allows you to take raw ingredients and turn them into meals, which can help to stretch your food out a lot further. A cooking hut will employ a cook, but you'll be able to make soups and stews, and eventually even more than that. A hunter's hut is a really powerful way to obtain a ridiculous amount of food. Honestly, maybe even more so than the farm. Only because the farm supplies primarily... Well, I'll back it up a little bit. The purpose of the farm, in my opinion, primarily is to supply flax for clothing for your villagers. Of course, you can also grow things like onions, which are really good healing items. The hunter's hut supplies an immense amount of meat, but one other thing it does is supplying bones, which are really good for tools, like arrows, and also it supplies leather scraps and leather and pelts and things like that, which is all needed for armor. So the hunter's hut, I would say, is even better to drive cooking than the farming, because for farming, you have to kind of decide flax or edible, whereas the hunter's hut, you get meat and leather. You get both. Because, you know, the hunters butcher the animals. That, and you can employ hunters to practice their bow skills and get better at bows, which then makes them more powerful at defending your own village. So it has a bit of a feedback loop there. Option number 5, improve the village with roads and decorations. So there are a lot. I know I've been like flattening out the grasslands here and making it like super ugly, but that's just so that the buildings can be laid out nicely. And roads allows you to run around your village without stamina, for the most part. And then decorations will actually increase the desirability of areas. But you can add decorations everywhere, and they're really, really cheap. And they can actually start to make your village look nice. Building a healing hut. A healing hut is a place where you can heal quickly. It helps more than just the chieftain. But the chieftain's hut also can act as like a healing spot for the player. And build a warehouse. So a warehouse, it might be a little early to build a warehouse, but the primary function of a warehouse is to store goods, and you can control who has access to the goods. So I'll give you a for instance. If you want your people to not eat raw vegetables, which is just not a really efficient use of raw vegetables, or raw berries, for instance, what you can do is you can stock your warehouse full of like the vegetables or berries or whatever it is, having only the gatherer or the farmer have access to the warehouse, and then only the cook have access to the warehouse for the vegetables or berries, so that it might be possible that the farmer or gatherer will eat raw berries, but for the most part, the rest of the villagers won't have access to those facilities, and therefore the cook will be able to take those ingredients and turn them into meals, rather than for your villagers to take them as raw ingredients. With that said, for the most part, people do end up eating meals, so... But the warehouse just limits, gathers everything in one spot, which is also really good for logistics. So there's some other good reasons to do that as well. So it looks like we are going to be building a hunter's hut. I think that's a wise choice, and we'll get that going. And thank you for voting. All right, a hunter's hut doesn't really matter where it physically is placed. Before we go any further, in this cottage we have 3 people. I think I'm gonna change the schedules around. So let's edit the mid schedule here. Load mid, and then this will be late because we have enough people to require it. So you are mid and you are late. And this is so that we have staggered schedules. Actually, with that in mind, Sapo loves the night, so I'm going to put Sapo to late and Turtle Sandwich to mid. There's a few other things I wanted to point out before I choose to build the Hunter's Hut. And one is proficiencies, which you can think of as like Rimworld Passions, and I'm going to get rid of this hedge tower. I don't actually want this here. I've decided against it. In fact, the other hedge tower probably won't stick around very long either. But back to proficiencies. So if we take a look at like Sapo here, Sapo has a stone harvest multiplier and a gathering harvest multiplier, meaning that they are best used in those roles. And right now, Sapo's being used as a stone cutter, so they are exactly in the role that they need to be. With that said, someone like Unexpected would be better employed as a wood harvester or wood cutter than a gatherer. So as we add people to our village, I will try to place them into occupations that are best suited for them. All right, some of these houses are unoccupied. Like this one doesn't have any occupants. And what I'm planning on doing before I really start to build new things is to break down the old things that we really don't have use for anymore. So I think those 3 shelters still have people in them, but the others don't. Great. So let's go ahead and lay out the Hunter's Hut. So thinking about the layout of this village, I would very much like to expand housing sort of into the woods back this way eventually. Meaning that at some point, this hedge tower is going to have to go. It's going to be easier to spread into the pine forest rather than the birch forest because I won't have a method to cut down birch trees for a bit. So if we're adding the Hunter's Hut, the Hunter's Hut adds housing points, but not too many. And I think what's going to be ideal is for the Hunter's Hut to be close to the houses and then also immediately close to where the cooking is going to be done so that we can move the meat from the hunting tower to the cook easily. Yaman, Quantum, Mazzy, Fraggles, and Steph, thank you for the cheers and the resubs. I'll drink to that. Was that a farm harvest? No, that was a farmer just like dropping fibers on the ground, and I just happened to pick them up. They would have scooped those up themselves and stuck it in the fiber box next to the farm. So what I'm doing right now is clearing out a spot. What I envision is that the cottages will be laid out around the farm here. So I want a spot over here for where the hunting is going to go. But we need to flatten out the land and cut down the trees before that's ready. Now, in terms of like longer term planning, and I'm going to be getting ahead of myself, and I wouldn't really consider this so much a spoiler, but I suppose I will say it's a slight spoiler warning. It's just about these sort of industries that you're going to need to prioritize the most later on. The one I would say you are going to use the most, or rather that the NPCs are going to have to control the most, is going to be carpentry. Most of the sort of late mid-game buildings require long sticks, logs of both birch and pine, and a lot of them. Like you will be constantly needing beams and posts and the like made by a carpenter. And the reason I mention this is the distance between certain buildings within your village is very important in that regard. So what I mean by that is having your carpenter immediately adjacent to either a warehouse that stores logs or the woodcutter's hut is going to be so important. Because without that, you're going to have villagers running back and forth hauling logs, which is just very, very inefficient. So I'm just offering this as a fair warning. When you're laying things out, make sure that there's synergy between industries, which is exactly why I said the hunter's hut should be pretty close to the cook. With that said, the hunter's hut also could be close to game. The way the hunting works is they hunt like deer and smokers and things like that, and then they haul the meat chunks back to base. And it's a relatively time-consuming practice. It does take a while to haul that stuff. So just keep that in mind. All right, I think I've cleared most of the land here. Now, adding to what I just said, one of the benefits the game has is you can, of course, get building refunds. So if at any time I wanted to move a certain hut, I could like break down the woodcutter set over here and move it to where it is more laid out more strategically. And it would require me to physically, you know, move the resources that we built it with, but you do get refunded, so it's not a huge deal. My character stat sheet? Sure. So the player themselves has a little bit of a proficiency in melee combat, but really nothing else. There are ways to temporarily increase your proficiencies, but I don't have access to those yet. That's later game content. All right. The other thing, because we don't have a cook yet, I am providing, and let's go ahead and get that fire stoked. Although I don't really have any meat to cook anyway. Hope these guys aren't starving. But that's something we're working towards, right? The hunter's hut will help to have everyone feed themselves. So in terms of our workers, I'm going to take Major Mildew off the hedge tower. Even though there might be a bit of a morale penalty as a result, it does look like Sapo's morale went up a bit and is no longer below 50%. Because the more builders that I have, the easier it's going to be for me to get work done. Is this a massively improved axe? This is the, like, two-hander axe. So it's a step above the basic axe that you gain access to. Which is why, plus there's a proficiency that I've gained. So it's a mix of both. My own woodcutting proficiencies is up to 16, which is like not terrible early game. Yeah, it's these large stone axes. In fact, I'm gonna take a new one. And the other thing is to make sure that there's like always spare tools here, even if they're broken down a little bit, so that your villagers can do the things they need to do, which will likely look like whatever occupation they have. While I'm staring at this, I might as well make myself the a little shirt. And I'll also talk about the most important skill to grind. So in terms of all of your skills, I would say easily the most important is crafting. So you will often find myself purposefully not employing a crafter so that I can do the crafting myself, because the amount of crafting skills that you need to unlock better pieces of armor are quite a lot. So I find it really important for me to actually do the crafting myself so that I build up those skills rather than rely on a villager for it. Because villagers can die, whereas the player really can't. I haven't died yet, but I could talk about the death penalties. But essentially, your game, you know, your character is more or less immortal compared to others. So I like to invest the most important skills in the player character themselves. And Queen Bee, thank you for the sub. And Raveno for the resub. So I'm just making myself some very basic linen clothing. Flimsy, awful, it's really not all that helpful. There was a better hood that I could have made. And the other thing is, if I wanted to make the better hood, I can take my current hood and just stick it on this mannequin here, this outfit rack, and villagers in their leisure time will come and scoop up the clothing. So when I'm focusing on making clothing for the village, I will often just like fill these racks up with like 2 full sets of clothing, and then just replenish them frequently. But because clothing crafting is a crafting skill, I like to craft it myself, even though it's time consuming, because I really need to build up the crafting skill to become a better crafter. That is vitally important for long-term success in this game. Getting your crafting skill up until like the 50s range is very important. And you could potentially have a villager do it. I just wouldn't trust one. Alright, so now I've made myself some nice clothing. I could also make myself a linen cape if there's more linen around. And this armor mostly protects you from the cold and a little bit from the rain. The thick linen hood has a tiny bit of armor. And the reason I say crafting is so important is later on, as you can see, like, the rough iron helmet requires a crafting of at least 24. So without, without a 24 level crafting, I wouldn't be able to make a rough iron helmet. And that goes up as well. Right, these shields require carpentry 10. Skills like blacksmithing and carpentry level up very quickly for the player, whereas crafting doesn't unless you like make an honest attempt to grind it, which is why I'm saying do the crafting for yourself. You will thank me. So it looks like we don't have any more flax around, so maybe this is all the gear that I'm going to make for myself for now. And I think I'm going to help out the builders leveling out this terrain so that they're going to actually start doing the hunter hut, because God knows they haven't yet. Oh, it's because they started making this, the Leatherworker. I guess I'll throw this together. I'll help them throw it together real quick so that they can move on to the hunter's hut. The other thing I could do is, and this was changed like a few days ago, the builders are supposed to help you with the pinned recipes. So if I, like, pin the hunter's hut, or, yeah, here we go. It's working. So now they're prioritizing the terraforming for the hunter's hut over the leatherworker as, like, a work priority because I pinned it. So that's why they switched workplaces. Generally, they work from, like, first in, first out. You know, they work on the oldest task that's available. But if you do pin tasks, they will prioritize the pinned task over other things. You don't have a place to forage food. Okay. In that case, I'm going to take a quick break from, helping out these builders to set up another forage flag after I lay out another flattened terrain field. I'm just trying to make a lot of room, for village expansion so that, we have lots and lots of space, because honestly, all the buildings that you'll end up building require a lot of space. So we have a food forage marker here and here. I want to make one to the north. So let's go north and drop a marker so we can start foraging up that way. And there's a bunch of other markers to be considered. So the forge marker is obviously for the gatherer, but there's also other markers that I hadn't really mentioned. So there is the building resources marker. So for instance, if your woodcutters are cutting down a lot of trees, but they're only prioritizing hauling like logs, you might only have logs in your base as a building material. And in this case, if you built a building materials marker, your builders could come out and collect the logs that they cut down, or collect the sticks and long sticks and things like that that they cut down in order to to accelerate building. So anytime that there's some sort of warning about your villagers not being productive, you should keep that in mind. Also, it looks like there's a lake region just to my north, because those are willow trees. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's fortuitous. So lakes are a really good way to get thatch. So instead of having to run all the way out to the shipwreck out here, I can just gather thatch at the large lake. And the way that certain materials like thatch and flax and berries and mushrooms, they grow seasonally. So every change of season, like right now it's summer, when it becomes autumn, all of the thatch around the lake would regrow. Unless, of course, you like built around it or did something to inhibit its regrowth. So there should be enough flattened area now to build a hunter hut. And this Leatherworker here is just missing like one rope, which isn't much. So these guys are saying you couldn't find any logs or ropes. There's literally logs right here. So this is a case, because I know I'm staring at logs, where the builder, I don't have a builder's hut. So the builders only really have access to the materials that exist in stockpiles, and therefore they're not using these materials. So this is actually a perfect example of me, if I put down a building material marker, it will be able to tell the builders, hey, use the materials in this area for the building projects. You don't have to wait for a woodcutter to go collect the log to put it away. So right now I'm looking for, there we are, some flax so that I can make another flag. This is a temporary flag. I'm just sticking here so that they... See how they keep saying they can't find any log or rope? Well, now they will. Those exclamation marks are going to go away real quick. And in this case, I can actually just drop the rope. So the rope is right there, and because the building marker, anything within this radius that just illuminated, is now an ingredient or a material that they can use. So here, as you can see, scrap code running over to the rope, picking it up, and delivering it to the hut. So, working completely as intended. So I think I'm going to build my hunter here, when this gets flattened out. And I'm going to cut some more of the trees around. So once we have the hunter set up, I'll need to run around and put down hunting markers to tell the hunter what regions of the area around the village are allowed to be hunted in. And that way you can control them getting too close to, like, monster areas or not. Can you move the markers? So if you could just dismantle the markers, recoup the cost of the marker, and then put it back down again. So they don't move so much as they can just be refunded. It's also worth noting that a lot of the buildings come with markers by default. So for instance, if we move over, you can see next to the woodcutter hut, this itself is a marker. And this is a marker separate from the hut itself. So when I built the hut, the marker gets built automatically, but this marker can be deleted. So if you don't want to cut trees near your home, you can get rid of the marker, the home marker, which covers the area directly around your home. I mean, I wouldn't when you're starting off in the game, but if you're ever trying to replant the forest to make it look nicer around you, you can certainly remove the markers that are there by default. Okay, we now have a leatherworker. So I'll talk about the leatherworker just after I lay out the hunter here. The other thing I might want to do is any, like, bumps and stuff, I can try to flatten out myself a bit. Alright, so here we go. Hunter's hut. Going in, and I'll stick it right here. Alright, so the hunter's hut is laid out. They just need to terraform it. So the leatherworker allows you to create leather hides from scraps and thread, but not all leather scraps are also useful for making tools, so you should not process all of your leather scraps into leather. And then once you have pelts or uncured hides, you put them on the rack here to cure them, and then there's storage here. And the workshop itself has access to all of the materials that are on the attached. So if I had cured hides here, or cured leather, or cured pelts rather, I could use those on that rack to make stuff here, because they're an interconnected building. It's essentially one building. So now that I have that, I have the ability to make leather boots, leather shirts, thick leather pants, so on and so forth. My recipe list has expanded a bit. Not that I really have a lot of the materials to do it, but, you know, if I did. Alright, let's get this hunter built. So the hunter is a 3-phase building, as you can see in the top left. First phase is rope, logs, and large stone, and I might need to go source the rope myself, because I know we're very low on flax because I made myself clothing. I probably shouldn't have done that in hindsight, but foraging for flax is not so hard. So maybe what I'll do is go up to that area, that open field, to start looking for some flax bushes to pick as penance for wasting our flax. And flax is definitely one of those materials early on that you're just going to need oodles of. Because almost everything requires rope. And then, you know, at some point when it gets colder, and later in the seasons, you will require clothing. I can make rope out of bark. I just don't have a lot of bark. And then bark is also one of the main ingredients for making cottages and roofing. So using up all of your bark can also be a bad idea. Although bark grows on trees, so you can always harvest more. Alright, I'm getting kind of close to the wolf den. Let's not get too close. But if I did want leather, the wolfars are obviously a really good source of pelts and hides. Alright, I probably have enough rope already for this project. Yep, no problem. Can you sleep overnight? No. You can sleep, but it doesn't, there's no passage of time. That, and I actually don't own a bed. Although because we work in shifts, there should be some open beds somewhere, because not everyone is sleeping right now. Now, if I did want to make the bark into rope, there's a few different ways to do it. One is I could look at it here and hold R to harvest, and it will, like, shred it. And that's kind of the slow way. The other way is to scoop up a whole bunch of bark and head over to the crafting hut, which I'll do next. So now I have 13 pieces of bark, and we can do it in batches. So if you head over to the crafting hut here and go fibers, I can turn the bark into fibers like that. And then any leftover bark I can just stick in storage here for later. And I'll even put my rope away so that my builders have access to 10 rope for the future when they need to do some crafting. Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea to batch up some bark right now, only because, are probably going to cut a lot more trees down to get a lot more bark, so I'm not too worried about burning through my bark supply. And there's 15 more rope. Is Sapo still super cranky? I don't believe so. $57. So up from, yeah, up a bunch from even the start of the stream. Sapo's okay. Alright, the next stage of this, this hunting lodge is... I guess I'll just cut these fir trees down. 3 logs, so I'll do the work myself. At this point, I think I am also going to assign Unexpected, who is better at wood harvesting than gathering. I'm going to assign him to be a woodcutter as well. So Unexpected becoming a woodcutter with Ink. And Ink has woodcutter XP multiplier as well. So they're both capable woodcutters. And the reason for that is I'm in the process of building a hunter hut, so I'm not going to need a gatherer necessarily. Gathering is great early game to feed yourself and to collect the seeds required to farm. But once you have a supply of seeds, you don't really need to employ gatherers continually unless you want to like make things with mushrooms or other resources you don't necessarily grow, because not all food can be grown. I should probably refuel this stone lamp, because the smokers sound like they're circling. Where'd all my resin? Someone hoovered up all the resin, actually. There we go. The other thing you might notice is anytime I cut down a tree, I also remove the trunks. Mostly because, like, if you don't continually do that, you end up with, like, a wasteland of trunks everywhere, which stop you from using the area for building until you remove the trunks, which kind of sucks. Is there a way to have villagers deliver firewood to lanterns? Yes. You need to build a builder's hut. And it's a task that a builder in a builder's hut has. So maybe that's my next project, because right now I have 2 builders, but no builder's hut. So there's all they do is build. They don't deliver fuel, but that's a totally reasonable thing for them to have to do. And you can vote on that as soon as the hunting hut is done. So stage 2: sticks, long sticks, more logs. So if you really like a well-illuminated village, it's entirely reasonable to put like a lot of lanterns in and sort of like have builders dedicated to lighting all the lanterns, and you can have it be really pretty if you want. And it's, as of 8 days ago, the builder's hut is like a really new feature, so as of 8 days ago you can keep that, you know, automatically lit without too much effort. Alright, let's go actually, let's make a new batch of rope with the bark that's around, rather than to use up the rope I've already made. And some smokers are coming, I'm not too worried about that. Well, I have multiple builders in the village, but I've been... I'm sort of responsible for doing all of this so far. But that's okay. Sweat equity and all. So, a little bit more rope, long sticks, bark, and sticks. And I'll try to come up with another project. In fact, since we're so close to being able to do this, I'm going to have you polled on what to build next. And then at some point I should probably bring in a new villager. But I don't exactly have a place for them to sleep. What I can do in the meantime is to put them up in the cottage, in a fourth bed in the cottage. But it would lower the desirability of the cottage a bit. Because the morale bonus for sleeping in a cottage gets split for all the occupants. So overcrowding your sleeping areas is something that you might be able to get away with early game, but like eventually you're probably going to get away, move away from that practice. For morale's sake. Hey, Smokler. I don't think you can go up that sheer mountain, bud. Don't come back. Alright, everything I need left is on my person. And the smugglers here are trying to eat. They eat, actually, it's not just crops. I think I mentioned this before. They'll eat resin, they'll eat Jotun blood, they'll eat your food, they'll eat, like, literally anything they can get hands on. They're nasty little critters like that, so, they are scared away from by villagers and also scared away from fires. So, there's a strategic reason to keep your fires lit. So now we have the hunter's hut. I could put Major Mildew in the hunting position. So Major Mildew does not have dexterity, though. Actually, does anyone? I can use the arrows up here to sort through them. I don't believe we have anyone that is good at hunting. So maybe I actually won't put him in that role just yet. I think what might be reasonable is to bring in another villager. And in that case, I might expand the amount of beds that we have in this here. Adding another thatch bed. It looks like you guys want a builder's hut. Well, builder's hut. And as far as the builder's hut go, it doesn't really matter where it's placed. As far as functionality goes. And it's very small. So wedging it in somewhere where it's out of the way is reasonable. Like sticking it, you know, maybe here. Because there's really nothing else that's physically going to fit in this spot. So this is a pretty reasonable spot for a builder's hut. And also the loom isn't getting any bigger, so it's not going to block the loom. Alright, so we have a builder's hut underway. I think while the builder's hut gets built, I am going to make a little bit of room and go for a thatch run. I'm going to grab some thatch from the lake to the north. And let's go ahead and get rid of this campfire and barbecue. I don't think we need it anymore. So fire cover, barbecue, campfire. We're phasing out those shelters anyway, so I might as well make an effort to do that for real. What's my thought around schedules? That's a bit open-ended. You mean, I'm assuming you mean scheduling in ASKA. I like it. I don't mind it at all. The scheduling and the whitelisting of zonings and facilities, I think, is a really functional way to control your villagers. It's also very similar to like going medieval and other games like that, and it works fine. It's a little unintuitive at first, maybe, but once you get used to it, it doesn't bother me at all. What I should have done is started to summon in a new villager, because they'll take like 5 minutes to summon in, and have you guys pick which one, rather than collect the thatch first, because the bed's going to be really quick to make. I could drop a woodcutter's marker out here, so that they collect thatch themselves, but I think it makes maybe more sense to have a physical road up here, so that the villagers don't spend so much time, running about. So at least for now, I'll probably have this collecting thatch be a task that I do as the player, because I do it faster than the villagers would do it. But there's not a lot of danger around here as far as I could tell. There's certainly stuff to the west to be avoided. Wolves' dens and skeleton cemeteries, but nothing in my immediate area gives me pause. Thank you for tuning in to ASKA, which originally streamed live on Twitch. If you have any feedback or questions for me, let me know in the comments below. If you would like to catch a live stream of mine, Rhadamant.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. If you would like to join my online gaming community on Discord, Rhadamant.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. Thank you so very much for watching. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch you next episode or an upcoming stream. Farewell, my fellow Vikings.